This video did not come to you by accident. It is a gentle reminder that life is sending you a signal that something deeper may be unfolding within your inner journey. Have you ever noticed experiences like these happening in your life? Strangers seem to open up to you more easily than to others. You walk into a room and instantly sense the atmosphere within it. Or sometimes, life brings you strange coincidences. You think about someone, and they unexpectedly reach out. You meet the exact person you need at the exact moment, or an important opportunity appears right when you need it most. From the perspective of Carl Jung, the master of analytical psychology, these events are not unusual. They are the natural consequence of a person beginning to live authentically and stepping onto the path that Jung called the process of individuation, the journey of becoming one's true self. When this journey begins, your awareness is no longer confined by old patterns. Your intuition becomes sharper, and most importantly, the connection between your inner world and the outer world begins to grow subtle, fluid, and mysteriously intertwined. In this video, we will explore 5 extraordinary experiences that people with a high inner vibrational frequency often encounter. Stay with this journey until the very last moments, and you may begin to realize that many things in your life that once seemed random are actually meaningful signs guiding your path. You will understand more clearly why your journey feels different and why that difference may be the greatest gift you possess. 1. Authenticity makes toxic people uncomfortable. There is a paradox that people on the path of developing their consciousness often encounter. The more sincerely you live, the more easily you become a thorn in the eyes of others. You have no intention of manipulating anyone, you do not pursue selfish gain, and you always strive to maintain integrity in every word you speak. Yet in return, what you receive are cold reactions, vague defensiveness, or even open irritation from those around you. When facing this kind of rejection, the first reflex of the ego, which always longs for recognition, is usually self-questioning. Where did I go wrong? Was I too straightforward? Should I hold myself back more so I can fit in better? However, when viewed through the lens of depth psychology and the movement of inner vibration, you may realize that their discomfort sometimes has nothing to do with any mistake you made. On the contrary, it may actually be evidence of a high inner vibration. Your authenticity is unintentionally performing a psychological function that not everyone is ready to accept. It strips away the social masks that people use to maintain their fragile psychological balance. Authenticity is not simply about telling the truth or being brutally blunt. It is a special energetic state, quiet yet powerful. People with a high inner vibration often refuse to build a polished persona merely to gain temporary approval from the crowd. They understand a deeper truth. Manipulating the emotions of others for personal gain, even for the sake of being liked, is the most ruthless betrayal of one's own soul. Instead of bending themselves to toxic social standards, they prioritize absolute consistency between thought, language, and action. In their world, the inner self and the outer expression are unified, a fusion of will and soul. This transparency creates a pure energetic field, but it also turns them into a strange object in an environment long accustomed to compromises, polite nods, and sweet lies. Why can kindness and sincerity feel so threatening? The answer lies in the mechanism of reflection in psychology. When you live too authentically, you unintentionally become a mirror placed in front of others. For those who have inner stability and are on the path of healing, your presence brings a sense of peace. as if they have discovered an oasis in the desert. However, for those carrying unresolved conflicts and unhealed wounds, your presence becomes a form of silent psychological torture. From the perspective of Carl Jung's analytical psychology, this phenomenon is closely related to the concept of the shadow, the dark part within every human being. The shadow contains the qualities, desires, or emotions we deny: envy, selfishness, fear, or hidden motives that are carefully concealed. Carl Jung once wrote a classic line that perfectly captures this resistance within human nature. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Accepting the whole self, including the ugly corners within, is a painful journey. Most people choose to avoid it by layering themselves with dazzling masks and playing perfect roles. But when they stand before someone who lives authentically, someone who no longer feels the need to hide their own shadow, the protective shell of those around them suddenly becomes fragile and easily shattered. Your authenticity acts like a beam of light shining directly into a dark basement they have deliberately kept locked for years. That light does not create darkness. It simply reveals the darkness more clearly than ever before. And they hate that feeling of being exposed. Imagine that you are a transparent crystal mirror placed in the center of a grand hall. The mirror does not judge, does not criticize anyone, and does not change its shape to please those who look into it. Yet anyone who passes by must inevitably see their true appearance reflected in it. A person with inner peace and confidence will smile at their reflection. But someone who is trying to hide flaws or scars on their face will feel resentment toward the mirror and may even want to smash it. People with high vibration never deliberately expose others. They simply live according to their true identity. They establish healthy boundaries, speak the truth with compassion, and refuse to participate in power games, gossip, or psychological manipulation. This steadfastness becomes the strongest test reagent for social relationships. It filters those who are brave enough to live authentically and pushes away those who still prefer to remain immersed in the illusion of a false ego. In Jung's theory, the true maturation of an individual is called the process of individuation. This is the journey of removing society's expectations and the collective identities in order to return to the original self. When you move closer to this stage, losing some old relationships becomes inevitable, even necessary. Those who once enjoyed the version of you that always agreed or was easy to control will feel betrayed when you begin to live authentically. They distance themselves because they can no longer find the reflection they desired, a reflection that once nourished their fragile ego. But instead of feeling heartbroken, understand that this is a sign of spiritual elevation. You are not going the wrong way. You are simply clearing space to welcome connections that share the same vibration. Relationships built on genuine understanding rather than emotional dependence. Living with a high vibration is not a road paved with roses. It does not promise the applause of the crowd, nor does it guarantee that you will always be loved in every situation. But it offers you a priceless treasure, inner dignity. When you stop acting, you save an enormous amount of energy that was once used to maintain social roles. You free yourself from the fear of being exposed, the fear of not being good enough, the fear of being judged. You step into a state of absolute freedom, a state where, even if the whole world turns its back on you, you still stand firmly because you have yourself. That deep peace is something no external recognition can ever replace. Therefore, if your authenticity unintentionally makes someone uncomfortable, smile and keep moving forward with compassion. Understand that their reaction is their lesson, their pain, not your burden. In a society operating on layers of overlapping masks, your transparency and integrity are a rare form of power. They are light, they are salt, they are an anchor capable of healing the world, beginning with healing yourself, by accepting every aspect of who you are, both the darkness and the light. If what you have just read makes you recognize yourself somewhere in this story, then perhaps your journey still holds deeper discoveries waiting ahead. The next sign I am about to share may cause you to reevaluate your entire life in a completely new way, a perspective that very few people are quiet enough to notice. 2. Strangers easily share personal stories with you. Have you ever found yourself in a strange situation like this? A complete stranger, someone you just met a few minutes ago at a cafe, on a long flight, or at an ordinary social gathering, suddenly chooses you as the person to unload their deepest confessions. They tell you about silent cracks in their marriage, the loneliness that surrounds them, even though they seem to have many friends, or a painful memory that has long been buried deep within the unconscious. While listening, you may even feel surprised, perhaps slightly confused. What about me makes them trust me so much? I didn't even ask many questions or offer any profound advice. In reality, from the perspective of analytical psychology, these encounters are not random or merely lucky. They are the result of a special kind of presence, an energetic field we might call emotional safety. This is a characteristic sign of people who have reached a certain level of inner maturity, causing others to unconsciously sense protection and acceptance from them without the need for any verbal promises. Those who possess this ability to attract truth usually do not try to play the role of a therapist or a healing expert. They do not enter conversations with the intention to analyze, dissect, or rush to give wise advice to fix someone else's life. Instead, they perform a simple yet extremely rare act in an era when everyone only wants to talk about themselves. They truly listen. This is not social listening where someone stays silent only while waiting for their turn to speak, or listens merely to deliver quick, superficial solutions like, "Everything will be fine." It is listening with complete attention, a state of deep inner stillness where the listener's ego has stepped back. When you listen with pure presence, the other person feels truly seen and acknowledged. In that space, there is no judgment, no interruption, and especially no imposition of personal views on someone else's story. This presence creates a precious psychological space where the other person feels safe enough to slow their breath and lower the strong defensive walls they have carried for many years just to survive in the world. Carl Jung, the master of profound studies on the human psyche, pointed out that this phenomenon is not merely a clever communication skill or natural sensitivity. It is actually a reflection of the inner depth of the listener. Jung believed that humans possess a subtle, intuitive ability to sense the authenticity of another person before the rational mind has time to analyze anything. When someone begins the journey of understanding themselves, when they have dared to touch the darker parts of their unconscious and learned to live peacefully with them, their presence automatically becomes less judgmental. A person who no longer fights with their own inner conflicts has no need to prove they are right, to appear morally superior, or to defend their ego in every conversation. This inner ease creates an extremely powerful form of psychological safety, making strangers feel that they do not need to perform or hide when standing in front of you. One of Jung's most important ideas that helps explain this phenomenon is the ability to face the shadow. He once wrote, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people." When you are brave enough to look directly at your own hidden corners, your mistakes, fears, envy, or weaknesses that society teaches us to conceal, you will no longer feel horrified or avoidant when you see similar things in others. Instead of rushing to make moral judgments, you gain the ability to remain with another person's pain longer, with greater patience. And remarkably, when someone feels they are not being judged, they begin to speak honestly. The things that were once suppressed, the secrets hidden beneath social masks, suddenly find a safe path to come into the light. This is why people with high vibration often become emotional anchors naturally, without much effort. If you notice that you often become a rest stop for wounded souls, understand that this is a natural consequence of inner growth. When you no longer spend energy fighting yourself, you also stop creating invisible pressure that forces others to appear perfect. Around you, people are given a priceless gift. They are allowed to be themselves, even if only for a few brief moments in a chance conversation. Sometimes this role may make you feel confused or tired, as if you are unintentionally attracting too much negative energy from the world. However, from a spiritual perspective and the evolution of consciousness, this is not a burden. It is proof that your presence brings a deep sense of peace. In a world full of masks and deception, a transparent and grounded soul becomes a magnet for truth. Of course, being a good listener does not mean you must become an emotional trash can or a victim of everyone's dependency. An important part of personal growth is learning to establish healthy boundaries. You can be a lighthouse, but you do not need to drown yourself in the sea to pull up sinking ships. Appreciate this natural empathy within you. It is not something that can be learned from books or short communication courses. It is the result of a long process of self-understanding and self-acceptance. It is kindness distilled through the unique experiences of your life. Deep within every human being lies a burning desire to be heard and understood. Not the shallow listening that happens in endless social chatter, but the kind of listening that makes them feel they truly exist and matter in someone else's eyes. People with high vibration create that feeling naturally. You do not need to speak eloquently or deliver lofty philosophies. Sometimes, simply sitting there, attentive and fully present, is enough for the other person to feel they are no longer alone in their life story. So if strangers have ever found it easy to trust you, know that it is because they have seen a stable lighthouse within your soul. Those random conversations sometimes heal them, but they also reflect your own inner growth. You are carrying out a quiet mission, helping others believe in sincerity in a world that is slowly becoming indifferent. 3. Meaningful coincidences appear more frequently. Have you ever experienced moments when coincidence becomes so strange that it leaves you stunned, causing your rational mind to pause because it cannot explain what happened by ordinary rules? Perhaps it is when you briefly think about an old friend you have lost contact with for many years, and immediately your phone notifies you of a message from that very person, or when you are standing at a crossroads in life, surrounded by dead ends, your mind in turmoil, and suddenly an old book falls from a shelf, a song accidentally begins to play in a cafe, or a stranger sitting beside you happens to say something that contains exactly the answer you have been desperately searching for. These moments bring a mysterious feeling, as if an invisible curtain has just been pulled back, revealing that your life is not a series of disconnected events, but rather pieces arranged by a hand full of intention. In the field of analytical psychology, this phenomenon is not regarded as superstition or meaningless chance. Carl Jung, the father of depth psychology, after many decades of observing the human psyche and the mysterious relationships between the inner world and objective reality, defined it with a classic term: synchronicity. This is not merely random coincidence. It is an event that occurs at the same time without any direct causal connection, and yet it carries an extremely important meaning, even one that changes the life trajectory of the person experiencing it. The key point that makes synchronicity different lies not in the rarity or dramatic nature of the event, but in the invisible connection between one's inner psychological state and an external real-life occurrence. Carl Jung once wrote an evocative line: "Synchronicity is an ever-present reality for those who have eyes to see." This statement does not imply that everything in life is rigidly arranged by fate, like a script already written. Rather, he emphasized that when an individual becomes more sensitive and more truthful toward their inner world, they begin to notice the subtle threads of connection that they once overlooked because of the noise of the ego and the distractions of material concerns. Reality is always sending signals, but only when we possess eyes to see, that is, an awakened consciousness, can we grasp their true meaning. People who practice mindful living and possess a high inner vibration often notice that synchronicity appears with increasing frequency. This is not because they are luckier or because the universe favors them in a biased way. In truth, this is the result of a stable, transparent, and upright psychological state. Imagine that your consciousness is like a radio. When you live far from your true nature, obsessively chasing glittering external values such as money and status, or trying to maintain layers of persona in order to please the crowd, your frequency becomes distorted by the static of fear, envy, and doubt. You are still receiving signals from life, but all you hear is meaningless interference, making it impossible to tell what is an opportunity and what is a trap. By contrast, when you begin to live more authentically, understand the deepest longings of your soul, and courageously face the shadowed parts of yourself, your frequency becomes pure. At that point, the inner world and the outer world seem to become synchronized. When your inner being is still, you become more sensitive to the touches of reality. Opportunities and people aligned with your true nature begin to appear clearly and at exactly the right time, just as two objects on the same frequency naturally resonate with one another. Carl Jung observed that these synchronicities rarely occur in periods of stagnation. They tend to surge most powerfully during important phases of transformation in life, when you change careers, face the pain of loss, or are on the journey of searching for your true self. At such turning points, reality seems to rearrange itself in order to support you. A book accidentally falls from a shelf and opens to exactly the page you need. A stranger on the street says something casually, yet it resolves a question that has troubled you for months. These events do not deny logic or science, but they show that the human psyche is far more complex than we imagine. We do not exist only in a three-dimensional physical space, but also within a multi-layered network of meaning, where every inner experience has the potential to interact with objective reality in a wondrous way. Living authentically is not merely about living positively, but about being able to recognize meaning in the chaos of life. When you begin to see disconnected pieces from the past and the present, suddenly linking together into a complete picture, that is a sign that you are moving in the right direction. This journey is like crossing through a dense forest. If you do not understand your purpose, every path looks the same, and you will easily get lost in fear. But once you have found a connection with your true self, even the smallest detail in the forest, from a faint trail to sunlight filtering through the leaves, becomes a guiding signal. Synchronicity is made of those signs. They never force you, but they gently suggest and encourage you, assuring you that you are drawing closer to the fullest version of yourself. The final sign, and also the highest expression of people with high inner vibration, is the ability to live in synchrony. They no longer see life as a sequence of monotonous repeated days or meaningless random events. Instead, they view each day as a journey of discovery, where every encounter and every coincidence carries its own message. When you reach this state, you not only radiate good energy to others, but also become a wise observer of your own life. You learn to trust the rhythm of the universe and the rhythm of your inner being. Peace does not come from everything unfolding according to your wishes, but from realizing that you are always being guided by the deepest meanings. You no longer feel like a victim of circumstance, but a co-creator together with life itself. Moments of synchronicity are the universe's encouraging nod, reminding you, you are present, you are living truthfully, and you are following the path your soul has chosen. It is a confirmation that no matter how noisy or chaotic the world may be, as long as you preserve your authenticity within, you will always receive the guidance you need to move through every stage of the journey. Experiencing synchronicity is the clearest proof that you are never alone. You are part of something greater, a network in which the mind and the material world are always deeply intertwined. If you have recognized these signs, keep listening. Practice stillness, dare to live with integrity, and most importantly, keep the eyes of your soul wide open. Synchronicities are not merely interesting events to reflect upon. They are milestones affirming that you are moving closer than ever to your own wholeness. In the world of synchronicity, every question will eventually find its answer, and every deadlock is only the beginning of a new door waiting to be opened. If these reflections make you look back on the strange coincidences in your own life, please press like and share this video so that more people can realize those moments are not meaningless. Perhaps your story will also become a source of inspiration that helps someone else understand they are not alone on their awakening journey. 4. An aura of positive energy attracts attention. In a crowded hall or a noisy party, amid chaotic sounds, artificial social conversations, and people's efforts to display their egos, there is always a strange phenomenon. There is one person who walks in without any dramatic introduction, without trying to attract attention through extravagant clothing or theatrical gestures, and yet the crowd's attention still unconsciously turns toward them. This magnetism does not come from being the loudest, the richest, or the most physically striking person. It comes from something far more subtle, a vibrational frequency that we sometimes call presence. A gaze filled with non-judgmental warmth, a calm and self-possessed demeanor, or a kind of energy that suddenly makes the surrounding space feel softer and more settled. People who carry this powerful yet quiet presence often possess a high inner vibration. This is not a social skill that can be trained in soft skills classes or through tricks for winning people over. It is the natural result of a journey of inner practice, reconciliation with oneself, and the ripening of consciousness. From the perspective of analytical psychology, this natural magnetism is the manifestation of a mind that has reached a state of consistency between thought, speech, and action. We often mistakenly believe that attractiveness is the result of external factors. Stylish fashion, showy confidence, material glamour, or carefully scripted stories designed to please the person in front of us. However, any attraction based on those outer layers is only temporary and fragile. The deepest and most lasting magnetism always comes from somewhere much deeper, inner stability. When a person maintains a healthy mindset and preserves peace within their soul, that state will automatically leak into the outside world, creating an irresistible form of attraction. At that point, their eyes no longer contain defensiveness, suspicion, or the urge to judge all common signs of an insecure person, but instead become clear, open, and full of compassion. Their presence no longer radiates haste, anxiety, or the effort to prove their worth. The way they listen and respond gives others a feeling of absolute respect and understanding. All of these small details blend together to create a powerful personal energy field, also known as an aura. It is like a silent fragrance that has the power to fill an entire room and influence the emotions of those present. What is astonishing is that we human beings have the instinctive ability to sense this energy field through intuition before reason has time to produce any analysis. Have you ever felt that a complete stranger was trustworthy after only a few seconds of contact? That is not random coincidence. Carl Jung devoted much of his life to studying the influence of the inner world on the way human beings interact with each other. He believed that we communicate not only through spoken language, but also through unconscious signals, through the vibrations continuously emitted by the mind. Jung once wrote a haunting reflection on humanity's tendency to run from itself. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul. When a person spends their entire life avoiding confrontation with their own soul, they accumulate countless inner conflicts, tensions, and fractures in the unconscious. Those insecurities, no matter how carefully hidden beneath polished layers of persona, will still reveal themselves in a rigid presence, a forced smile, or an unsteady gaze. By contrast, people with high vibration are those who have courageously shone light into their own darkness. They know they have limits, flaws, and fears, but they choose to embrace them instead of denying them. When they accept both their strengths and their imperfections, their energy becomes unified, seamless, and stable. It is precisely this inner consistency that creates a sense of absolute safety and trust that others can feel almost immediately. You do not need to try to appear good, because that goodness has already become your nature. In ancient cultures, this state was often symbolized through deities of light. A typical example is Apollo in Greek mythology. Apollo was not only the god of art, but also a symbol of clarity of mind, logos, and the harmony of inner order. Wherever Apollo is present, there is clarity, brightness, and order. This is a perfect metaphor for how a person with inner balance affects the environment around them. They do not need to display power or use force to control others. Their inner harmony itself creates a natural gravitational pull, drawing everything toward the light and helping those around them also find clarity in their own minds. People who carry high vibration often live simply and sincerely without even realizing their influence. They do not enter a room thinking, "I must attract everyone." For them, being kind or living honestly is simply the way they exist. Yet the world around them receives those positive vibrations very clearly. People find it easier to release their burdens and open up when speaking with them. People feel more secure when they are present in tense situations. On a deeper level, we can see that inner energy is always what determines how others receive you. It is like a lamp lit in the darkness of night. The lamp does not need to strain to shine or try to invite people to look at it. It simply exists, and that very existence changes the nature of the darkness around it, creating a warm and peaceful space. The deepest meaning of this sign is this: you do not need to strive to become special. When you live according to positive values and preserve peace within your soul, your magnetism will bloom naturally. Sometimes, the people who make the least effort to leave an impression are the very ones who leave the deepest mark on others, because they offer people what they lack most: a peaceful space in which they can truly be themselves. If you notice that you often attract attention in this gentle and positive way, if strangers often trust you, if you feel that you are a thorn to artificial people but a pillar of support to sincere ones, then that is confirmation that your inner world is reaching a state of clarity and harmony. Do not worry if your sincerity makes a few people uncomfortable, and do not concern yourself if you are not a good fit for showy crowds. Keep walking the path of living truthfully with yourself. Continue cultivating inner stillness, because that is the most powerful way to change the world around you without using any pressure at all. Your magnetism is not a strategy, it is the light of the soul, and light, by its very nature, always finds its own way to shine. 5. Balancing the inner masculine and feminine energies. Conversations that change human consciousness often do not begin with lofty, dry teachings on the pages of ancient books, but rather from very real lives, from pains and longings that are finally given a name. Catherine, a friend I spoke with during a nostalgic class reunion one afternoon, shared with me her own journey, a journey that is not only a personal story, but also the common voice of so many souls, quietly yearning for inner growth in a world full of upheaval. She confessed that for a long time, she felt as if she were being split in 2 by 2 opposing currents of energy, a state of inner tearing that she called internal betrayal. There were phases when she forced herself to become so tough and decisive that she turned cold. She had to control every situation, constantly prove her competence, and refuse all help out of fear of being seen as weak. It was an iron mask she wore in order to survive in a fiercely competitive environment where she believed that only hardness could keep her standing. And yet, when night fell and the office lights went out, she would collapse into the opposite extreme. She became overly sensitive, easily wounded, directionless, and completely overwhelmed by even the smallest frictions of life. Catherine shared this because she realized that her inner tearing was not unique. So many of us are wandering through that same maze. We want to be strong enough to take charge of our lives, to carry responsibility, but deep down, we still long to be loved, supported, and treated with gentleness. At first, this contradiction made her doubt her own weakness, and she blamed herself for not being able to stay consistent. But through the lens of analytical psychology, she discovered an important truth: that inner tearing was not a flaw, but a signal. It was a cry for help from imbalance. According to Carl Jung's theory, every human being, regardless of biological sex, carries within a blending of 2 core psychological energies: masculine energy, animus, and feminine energy, anima. What is important to note is that these are not classifications of sex or gender identity, but archetypes, spiritual qualities that symbolize the way we interact with the world. Feminine energy represents intuition, the ability to nurture, softness, deep receptivity, the ability to connect with emotions and the wisdom of the heart. It is like an underground spring that brings life and flexibility. Masculine energy, by contrast, is associated with action, decisiveness, the ability to protect, responsibility, logical thinking, and clear direction. It is like the frame of a house, creating structure and safety. When Catherine began to understand this principle, she realized that the heart of the problem was not that she was too emotional or too rational, but that these two forces had become disconnected. When she leaned too heavily into the masculine, she became rigid, cut off from her soul, and every relationship became transactional, lacking deep connection. When she leaned too heavily into the feminine without the protection of reason, she became easy to manipulate, easy to lose, and felt like a rudderless boat in the middle of the ocean. True maturity is not about choosing one over the other, but about the art of harmonizing both. Carl Jung once spoke of the power of this union through a haunting metaphor. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. For Catherine, when she learned to listen to her intuition while still maintaining the clarity to act, she found peace. She remained a gentle woman, yet one full of strength, knowing when to be soft in order to understand, and when to be firm in order to protect her core values. She no longer tried to defeat the weak part of herself, but learned instead to hold it with the maturity of reason. This process is precisely what Jung called individuation. It is the process of becoming oneself in a complete way. It is not about trying to become a perfect person by eliminating flaws, but about integrating all aspects of the self, the hidden corners, the fears, and even the untapped potentials in order to form a whole being. People with high inner vibration are often those who have gone far on this journey. They have escaped the trap of pleasing society, the trap that constantly forces us to play a fixed type of person. Society always prefers labels. Strong people are not allowed to cry. Sensitive people are not allowed to lead. But individuals with high vibration understand that freedom begins the moment those labels are abandoned. They are not so soft that they lose their personal boundaries. They know how to say no when necessary. But neither are they so dry that they lose empathy. They are gentle without being weak, strong without being cold. They understand that the greatest strength is authenticity. When you no longer have to strain yourself to play a role, the energy you save from all that performing is transformed into stillness and clarity. It is precisely the balance between these two energies that creates a very special kind of magnetism. People around them often feel safe in their presence because they radiate the stability of someone who knows exactly who they are. They do not need to prove their competence to others, nor do they need to struggle for status. They are simply living fully with both parts within themselves. When you accept yourself, the world around you also learns how to accept you. Catherine's story could be the story of any one of us. In a world that constantly forces us to label ourselves, the ability to reconcile these two opposing currents of energy is one of the deepest forms of maturity. High inner vibration is not some lofty, impractical state. It is the result of a long inner process, full of sweat and tears. It is the moment when you stop fighting yourself, stop judging your own emotions, and accept that you need both the firmness of will to endure storms and the softness of feeling to enjoy the sunlight. Peace does not come from eliminating all conflict, but from finding the center of the storm, where everything is still no matter what is happening around it. When harmony is achieved, peace arrives naturally, as if by inevitability. You no longer see yourself as a being split in two, but as an individual who has found unity. You begin to look at life not through the lens of right and wrong or win and lose, but through the lens of understanding and compassion. After achieving this balance, People with high vibration often experience another special ability, the ability to affect the entire surrounding space simply through their presence. Have you ever met someone who, the moment they walk into a room, makes the atmosphere feel lighter, makes people suddenly want to speak more honestly, and causes all the noise and haste to settle down? That is the energy of integration. When you are no longer at war within yourself, you no longer project your insecurities onto others. You become a safe zone for the people around you. They do not need to defend themselves in your presence. Your presence becomes a mirror, reflecting peace and awakening the best qualities in the people you encounter. This is the higher level of conscious development. It no longer stops at fixing oneself, but expands into influencing life. A person who has mastered inner balance does not need to make an effort to change the world. The world changes on its own when it comes into contact with their authenticity and peace. So much of human suffering comes from inner division. We are taught to suppress what is soft, to hide what is vulnerable, and to worship only the parts of ourselves that appear strong and useful. But the soul does not grow through rejection. It grows through integration. It grows when we stop seeing our sensitivity as weakness and our strength as hardness, and begin to understand that both are sacred in their own way. Perhaps this is the quiet message behind every awakening. You do not need to become more impressive, more perfect, or more acceptable to the world. You need to become more honest, more present, more willing to stand in the truth of your own complexity without shame. The moment you do that, something shifts. Your life is no longer built on performance, but on presence. Your relationships are no longer driven by fear, but by depth. And your energy begins to carry a peace that others can feel, even before you speak. If there is one truth worth holding on to, it is this: the harmony you seek is not somewhere outside of you. It has always been waiting within you, beneath the noise, beneath the fear, beneath every role you were taught to play. And once you find it, you will not only change the way you live, you will change the atmosphere of every life you touch. After all the signs we have explored together throughout this series of content, perhaps the most important thing is not how many of them you possess, but the core meaning they represent. These experiences are not random events. They are signs indicating that you are truly living authentically with yourself, walking steadily on the journey Carl Jung called the process of individuation, the journey of becoming the most whole version of yourself. Throughout 5 signs we have reflected on together, which one resonates with you the most? Do not hesitate to share your personal experiences in the comments. Perhaps your heartfelt words may become a great source of encouragement, helping another soul feel understood and more confident that they are not alone on this journey. Finally, if these perspectives have brought you a fresh insight or a peaceful pause in your mind, take a moment to press the like button and share this video with those who are also searching tirelessly for understanding in life. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel so that we can continue walking together in upcoming content on analytical psychology, inner awakening, and the journey of full personal development.